Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Tom Conley, editor of Legal Cheek and chair for this afternoon's event, The Digitisation of Global Retail, with international law firm RPC. Now, every sector of the global economy is being disrupted by the push towards digitisation and new and more inventive business models. And arguably, this is no more visible than in the retail sector. This drive towards digitization, has been supercharged by the pandemic, and ultimately consumer habits across the globe are changing. Many of you will just have to walk down your local high streets to find evidence of this change in action. Now, RPC, who act for a wide range of global retailers, along with many of the digital platforms which enable their success, is playing a key role in helping its clients navigate this fast-moving industry, from legal and technological developments through to sustainability and ESG issues. RPC lawyers are well positioned to handle whatever the retail sector might throw at its clients. Now, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by four of the firm's lawyers this afternoon, who between them cover a broad range of specialisms under the umbrella of retail, really. This includes IP and technology, commercial contracts, advertising and marketing, among others. Over the course of the next hour or so, they will discuss some of the work they're helping retail clients with, as well as reflect on their own career journeys to date and offer up advice for those seeking to follow in their footsteps. Now, firstly, a very good afternoon to the panel. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon, and thank you very much for giving up your time in what I imagine is very busy schedules for you all. And just a bit of background on how the platform works. If you're new to this, on the right-hand side, you'll see that there's the comments section. If you've got any spontaneous questions for the panel as we're going along, please submit those questions in there. There's also a Q&A function, again, on the right-hand side that those of you at home can see. You can submit your questions there as well. And we're also asking a poll question this afternoon. Again, for those of you tuned in at home or wherever you might be, you can see that on the right-hand side. We'll come to that a little bit later on within the hour. We'll get the panel's views on how that poll is voting, and that's a question based on digital retail. Now, to kick things off, I'm going to hand over to the speakers to introduce themselves, maybe spend 5 minutes on their career journey and explain a little bit about what they do at RPC. And to kick things off, perhaps we could start with Kira, please.
Sure. Thanks for that lovely intro, Tom. Hi, everyone. My name is Kira Cullen, and I'm a partner in the IP and tech group at RPC. For those of you who don't know us, we have over 800 people now spread across our 4 offices, which are in Bristol, Hong Kong, Singapore, and here in London. At RPC, and I suppose before I go in to talk a bit about myself, I thought I'd explain to you a bit more about our retail and consumer group, which we all are members of. So at RPC, we have 5 key strategic pillars, as we call them. There's one of those which I lead, and that's retail and consumer. Within that group, we have over 70 specialists in our retail group, including some of these awesome lawyers I have here with me today. As Tom mentioned, we cover everything from really everything you can think of when you're advising a retailer or consumer brand, whether it's advising brands that are looking to build a direct consumer app offering, or dealing with an IP infringement claim, or restructuring their business post-COVID, or dealing with furlough and employee issues. Basically, we cover the full gamut, everything you can think of if you're a retailer or a consumer brand. I think what sets us apart as well is that many of the lawyers within our group have in-house boots on the ground experience, as we call it, whether that's having previously worked for retailers, in a legal or other capacity throughout their careers, or indeed having been seconded into some of the biggest retailers across the UK. I think it's very clear from working in the group and the real buzz that I feel on a daily basis that the lawyers are super interested in the sector and really love the work. And I think that will probably come across when you speak to some of these lovely people today. So a bit about me and my career journey. Well, I would say that I took probably a very traditional route into the profession. So I studied law, did my LLB in Trinity many, many years ago. You can check it out on LinkedIn. I won't publicly announce the time. But I would say not from a very traditional legal family. So my father and brother and my grandfather were all in the police force, or the Garda Síochána, as it's called in Ireland. And my mum was a housewife, a great one at that. But I did contemplate initially actually coming out of Trinity being a criminal lawyer. But my father, understandably, did not think having a criminal defense lawyer in the family was on brand. Um, so I did my training contract or apprenticeship, as it was called in the day, in A&L Goodbody in Dublin, which is one of the big five corporate firms in the Irish market. IP was definitely one of my favorite seats, and I was delighted when it was one of the groups that I was offered to qualify into upon qualification. Um, God, when I look back, like thinking about this event, I was kind of thinking of the type of work I did in those early years in A&L. And it was everything from being involved in like the very first database rights case, which came off the back of the British Horse Racing Board and William Hill dispute many, many years ago, to one of the very first screen scraping cases for Ryanair. Which are all very kind of groundbreaking, novel things at the time when people were just coming together with kind of retailing on the internet. And also did the vast majority of patent litigation in the commercial court, from when it was founded in the early 2000s in Ireland for big, huge, life sciences, blockbuster products for the likes of Abbott Laboratories and so on. I also developed from a very early stage in my career a real passion for food and drink, and in particular the alcohol industry. No jokes allowed. And I've been working for, doing work for Pernod Ricard, who own a whole load of global brands like Jameson and Chivas and Perrier Jouet and GH Mum. So I'd been doing work from them since I was a newly qualified back in the day in Ireland, and I've continued to do work for them to this day in RPC. So I came across to the UK as a senior associate. I joined RPC in 2013. And yeah, it's hard to believe I've been there 8 years. I have been a partner 5 years, and as well as leading the retail pillar, I actually head up the food and drink group within the firm, which is a group that sits within and under the umbrella of our retail and consumer pillar. And we act for some really exciting brands like Budweiser and Stella Artois, and some of the other ones I just mentioned there a moment ago. Coca-Cola, Pizza Express, Duck and Waffles, Sushi Samba, you name it. So lots of cool kind of global and local brands on the market here. The work I do is so varied and interesting. I can genuinely say that no 2 days are the same. Sometimes I wish they were. A little bit of boredom and repetition is welcomed every so often. But yeah, it's been really quick, actually. That's the one thing I noticed thinking back on this, how quickly your career moves. And I think it's probably the nature of the type of work we do and the types of clients that we work for. They're always changing, doing things, keeping up with the trends. And I think that's what keeps it really interesting for us. That's probably enough about me and what I do. I'm going to hand over to Sophie, who's one of the senior associates on the team.
Thanks, Kira. Hi, everyone. So yeah, as Kira said, I'm a senior associate in the IP and tech group at RPC. So a little bit about me and my journey, career journey so far. I actually came in through the non-law route. I studied history at university, and actually law wasn't really on my radar until quite a few years after graduating. And my interest in law really first started when I was working for a human rights charity when I first graduated. And I was doing some research around the law and regulation relating to human trafficking and modern day slavery. And that kind of piqued my interest in the law and legal institutions and how it all works. So I then decided to study the GDL, and then it was during that year on the GDL that I really developed my interest in commercial and IP law, which prompted me to then apply for the RPC summer scheme, because IP and commercial law is a big area of focus for the firm. They're great at it, so it was an obvious choice for me as a student looking to thinking about the firms that I might want to apply to. So I did the 2-week summer scheme back in 2013, which was great. I would absolutely encourage everyone on this call to apply to the summer scheme. It's a fantastic 2 weeks. Really great way to get to know the firm, the culture, and get a taste of the work that we do. And then off the back of those that 2-week scheme, I then got the training contract. And really from there, I've spent the whole of my career at RPC. And I think for me, when I was reflecting, one of the key kind of themes or things that stands out to me is this idea of opportunity, which I know might sound a bit cliched, but I really do think that at RPC, if you're hardworking and you're ambitious, there is so much opportunity for you to grow and develop your career in the direction that you want. And I'll just give you a few examples of some of those opportunities I've had since I started as a trainee. So when I was doing my training contract, I was lucky enough to do a 6-month secondment to Fraser's Group, which is one of the firm's biggest retail clients. So that was a great experience to understand the retail industry in more detail and to build those networks with clients. And then straight off the back of that, I did a 6-month secondment to the Singapore office in Singapore, working with our international colleagues, which was a lot of fun. And now I've qualified, I do a mix of IP, commercial, consumer, and regulatory work, both for retailers, but also I do a lot of work with tech clients as well. And I've recently finished a secondment with Google. So I was there for 7 months, helping their legal team on some really high-profile litigation. I was working on a big competition case relating to the Google Play Store. You might have seen it in the press. It's a competition case that's been issued by Epic Games. So I've been helping with that. And I also was working on a big regulatory investigation into fake reviews. So that's just a bit of a snapshot of the kind of in-house experience I've had. But yeah, it's a really, really great firm. It's a great group. And the retail pillar in particular is doing some really exciting work, which no doubt you'll hear about more in the next couple of hours. That's me. And I'll pass over to either Brendan or Jalila, whoever wants to go next.
Go on, Jalila, you can go first.
Because Sophie's such a tough act to follow. Hi everyone, I'm Jalila. I'm an associate in the IP technology commercial team. So taking it probably quite far back, I am from Manchester, if you can tell by the accent. Went to college in Manchester. I then went to university in Birmingham, and I initially did sociology as my degree. And I thought it was really interesting, but one day I sat there and I said, this is really interesting, but it's just talking about all the things that are going on in the world. I actually want to do something that helps to change the world. So I started thinking about it, and then I ended up having to leave a year early due to family things. So then for next year when I was going back, I was like, no, I'm going to take the plunge. I'm going to do what I really think I'll enjoy and what I'll be good at. So I changed and I did law, and I was really happy, really enjoyed doing it. So I did that for 3 years. My favourite subject was tort law and medical law. So I decided at that point that I absolutely knew 100% I was going to be a personal injury lawyer forever. That was me done. So I left and I became a personal injury paralegal. And then I started doing more commercial work with them. And I was like, you know what, actually, this is really, really interesting. I quite like the commercial stuff. And actually taking it a step back, I'd gone to, as you all probably are doing at the moment, going to loads of open days and different career things and just trying out different firms and different things to find what you're interested in. So great job as well coming to things like this. And it was at one of these types of events that I actually met people from RPC, and I remember thinking they're really nice people, so much fun, and they'd be great to work with. Unfortunately, I was like, this is what I want to do, just personal injury claimant side. Pigeonhole myself, tip from me, don't do that. And then so then after I realised I actually had an interest in commercial law, it clicked to me straight away. I was like, I wonder what RPC has going on, the types of things they could be doing. So I went back, applied to RPC, and then ended up getting a vacation scheme as well, the summer scheme. As Sophie said, would only recommend it. It's fantastic, if not just for the food, because now we're back in the office, we do great food. And so I did my back scheme there, got the training contract. My training contract, I did my first seat in IP and commercial. Then I moved on to commercial disputes, predominantly doing banking litigation, but the team is so varied. So I just literally took every opportunity and did everything that I could over there. So employment, regulation, white collar, everything you can think of. Then I did a comment at Fraser's group, like Sophie did, which was absolutely fantastic experience. So much hands-on experience, so great for the retail sector. Like I said, it's even things just as small as walking around a warehouse and being like, oh my gosh, is this how all this stuff works? This is what happens when I'm buying 1,000 things off of whatever online store. And so that was great, really getting to work with the clients, great team. And it just really built your confidence and your understanding of what retail clients really want and need, even just for minor things. So as a junior lawyer, you'll be very used to trying to sound as legal, well, use as much legalese as possible to convince yourself that you're supposed to be here. When you find out that actually short and simple is what people want. And then I did a corporate seat for my final seat before qualifying back into the IP second commercial team. Here I do loads of retail work, predominantly retail work, I would say. And that's not by chance, it's because, as Sophie said, I love doing the retail work and try to get as involved as I possibly can. And the firm really, really supports that. And I would say, because it's a strategic priority for the firm, retail, it's a really good time to get in now. As a junior lawyer, I think at RPC you do so much stuff which I wouldn't have even expected I would have any exposure to until way later on in my career. And so it's fantastic, it's really fun, you actually feel valued by your team members, which I know everyone says on these types of things, but it's actually true. So yeah, that is a roundup of everything that I've done. Brendan?
Cheers, Talila. I'll try and follow in all of your footsteps now. Thanks. So my name is Brendan Collar. As you can tell, I am from Portsmouth, probably by the accent, not London and not Bristolian, but in between the two. People do get mixed up sometimes. So yeah, from Portsmouth, or aka Pompey, for those football fans that are listening today. I'm the first person to study A-levels and to go to university in my family. Went to State College, where I studied law, English, maths, which I didn't do so well in, so I knew that wasn't for me. And then also religious and philosophy studies. So yes, as I said, I went on to study law, LLB, at Cardiff Uni, where I studied sports law, which I really enjoyed during the combination of everything else. But I didn't do IP as an option, but I did do sports law, which had various intrinsics that follow over and quite similar in that sense. So I knew that commercial agreements of that nature, broadcasting, advertising, marketing, was something that I had an interest in, but didn't know too much about. I secured a training contract at Shoesmith, so I didn't actually train at RPC. Not that's a problem, but yeah, I didn't train at RPC, but obviously made the right decision to move as an NQ. But yeah, so I did my four seats at Shoesmiths. One of them included a commercial secondment to 3 Mobile, and that really sort of ironed out that I wanted to do commercial law. And in particularly, when I was at 3, I sat in the marketing, media, and IP seat, or the team there, as they call themselves, which I really enjoyed, and basically said, right, this is what I want to do. Went back to Shoes for my last seat, and an opportunity came up at RPC as an NQ. And Kira, actually on the call, did interview me as well for the position way back, which is over 2 years ago now, Kira, which is mad to think. But yeah, so I'll let Kira say whether it was a good interview or not. But here I am, so hopefully it wasn't too bad. But so yeah, so I sit in. I sit in CTO, which is a little bit different to the IP team. So it stands for Commercial Technology and Outsourcing. So I don't sit with my colleagues on the phone, but we do a lot of work, but we sit within the retail group. So a lot of the work, and part of the reason why I wanted to move over purely is because one, RPC does a lot in the ad and marketing space. So to name drop again, we do a lot of work for Google and Facebook and all the others that have been previously mentioned in this area. And that's something that I obviously did at 3 and wanted to continue. But then also the retail work. And during my 2 years here now so far, I do a lot of work for the Azuri group. So think pizza and pasta, everything Z's and Ask Italian, Coca de Mama. So if you like your pizza and pasta, and we do a lot of work with the aggregators. So when I say aggregators, I mean Uber, Just Eat, etc. So when you're feeling a little bit rough or worse for wear on a Sunday and you look to your phone to get some pizza or pasta delivered, we've set up those agreements. We work with the guys there, which is good. And also probably one of the biggest deals that I've done since I've been here is with the Frasers Group, which falls within obviously SD and so forth. We did a deal with Game for an EA Sports company. So that branched across Europe, EMEA, the US, pretty much everywhere around the world. And that touched upon, again, tech v retail, bricks and mortar, but then also online, gaming, etc., arenas. So just to give you a brief background, and conscious not to talk too long and ramble on, but it was a pretty cool deal. We entered into an agreement with a US company, and for the setup of arenas around the US, whereby people could go in and play one another in a competition. So that'd be FIFA and things like that. Fortnite was obviously is a massive thing back then, and the next and newest upcoming things in that area. So yeah, that was a real big deal, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and also shows that the fact that the retail space is also mixing with tech, and I think we've seen that probably more so in the last 18 months than ever before. But yeah, so that's a bit of a background to me. I'll pass back to Tom.
Thanks very much for that, Brendan, and thank you for those really detailed overviews of your career. They all sound equally fascinating. And Brendan, you'll be pleased to see there's at least one Pompey fan in the comments.
Great.
There's at least one in this afternoon, which is great.
Fabulous.
We're now going to dive into some of the questions that the students have submitted in advance of this afternoon. And the first one is from Joe Dodd from the University of Manchester, and he wants to ask the panel, is the recent acquisition by ASOS of several Arcadia brands, which did not include the brand's premises, symbolic of a broader wave focusing exclusively on digital retail and away from the high street? So what does the panel make of Joe Dodd's question there?
I think it's a valid observation, but I suppose what I'd say is we certainly don't see a shift to exclusively digital or online retail. Without doubt, digital has been on the rise for years, and the growth of it has been, I suppose, escalated or brought forward as a result of COVID, because we were all sitting in our houses and shopping from home. So any of those kind of bricks and mortar only retails quickly had to scramble to get together a platform or some form of online offering. And so while it is on the rise, I think there is still very much, and certainly with our clients, we're seeing there's very much still a place for bricks and mortar retail. And, there's been a lot of data over the last kind of 6 months since the world has reopened, and particularly since we have here in the UK, which demonstrates that, people are still supporting the high street. People still want to go to physical stores and feel stuff. They enjoy the experience. But I suppose the one thing we are really noticing is that, well, aside from having to have, I suppose, a hybrid retail offering, a bit of like, the offline and online, in terms of the offline offering, brands are really investing in the experiential type offering now. So like, it's such a different world from what it was even 5-10 years ago. Like now, like name any high street store or retailer, and like it's now also a place you can go to drink a coffee, to get your nails done, to get your hair done, to see a DJ play, to engage in some kind of virtual reality in terms of trying on clothes and taking pictures for Instagram. So I think, good question, Joe, but certainly my view of the world is that there's still the need and the desire for both. And actually, even when the reverse is happening as well. So those retailers who are solely online or digital are actually now moving into the physical space as well. Amazon is probably like the best example of that. So Amazon Fresh, which I was in the States probably about 3 years ago now. I thought it was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen, where you just like basically go in, walk in, pick up your stuff and walk out. Opened their first store here in the UK in March. So that does show as well that there's kind of a drive in the other direction from the online retailers. Netflix is probably another really good example of that. So they're opening their first physical bricks and mortar store in Japan, where you can go in and buy, I guess, merchandise from your favorite TV shows and that kind of stuff.
Well, that's really interesting, Kira. Sorry, just to pick up on that point about how serious do you think Amazon are about, that example you used with that Fresh store? I think they've opened one in West London as well. I think I read that somewhere. How serious are they about developing that as a sustainable business model, or is that just, if they just got so much money, they just think, oh, well, it's worth trying this out?
I mean, okay, Amazon do have so much money, as we know, but I mean, they're not the type, and Jeff Bezos isn't the type of person to like just give something a go and try it out either without properly doing their research. I think they really understand that there is still a need for this. Like, not least given that I suppose what COVID did demonstrate, that a lot of our online grocery stores were not really fit for purpose in terms of that purpose, where everybody needed at-home delivery. Like, there was points there during the past 12 months where you couldn't actually get a delivery for about 2 or 3 weeks. It was like, yeah, you can have your pint of milk, but like you're getting it at the end of the month. So I mean, it's when you look at the grocery trade, I suppose in particular, like there is a few players and a lot of money to be made, and Amazon are very successful at doing that. So I think they are pretty serious about it, particularly with the move into Europe. I'd say they tested the water in the States and saw it was working out well.
Thanks for that answer, Kira. Does any of the panel have anything to add on that point before we move on to the next question?
I was just going to say one thing, which is kind of goes to the point of whether Amazon are kind of serious about this investment. So as Kira said, the first store was opened in March in Ealing, which is actually where I'm from. So I did pop in at the time and check it out. But I think now there's 7 stores across London. So that's just in the last 6 months they've expanded. So I think we're likely to see an increased, further trend and further stores opening, perhaps in other parts of the country as well. So it does look like they do have a real intention to have a bricks and mortar presence.
They're taking over. Thanks for that, Sophie. We've now got another question. It's a similar vein about the bricks and mortar, but slightly taking it on. And this is from Susanna Cox from Manchester Met. And she asks, how are retailers attempting to reinvent their bricks and mortar retail spaces to encourage footfall? And what role do lawyers play within their clients' forward strategies?
I can pick that one up. So I think, that goes quite squarely almost to what Kira was just saying a moment ago. And I'd say the top thing there would be experiential retail. And it's about repurposing their actual physical stores to make it a space that people want to attend, people want to go to. There's different things to do while you're going shopping. So as Kira said, it is about being able to go there, feel the clothes like it has been traditionally. But also people have changed a lot of their, sort of offerings. So like Brendan said, you have Fraser's Group, for example, in games, they have their in-store gaming centre. You have different people. I think I saw something recently about Lego, where obviously you'd presume that's mostly for kids when you go past the store, but they've recently apparently branched out trying to get more adults involved. So they did a collaboration recently with Adidas where you could create your own Lego shoes and kind of make them 3D printed almost. They have a Lego bar, which I'm sure isn't directed at the kids. There's loads of different types of things. I know with flannels, they now have Flannels Beauty. They have in that same place, they have yoga spaces, places to do yoga, places for different food and drink. There's lots of brands which are collaborating with animals. So I actually sent a Instagram post to my friend. I said, we have to go here the other day. There's a new there's a luxury pets brand, and you can bring your pets. They have a pet cafe and all these other things. And you can actually buy items for other people's pets, which is ingenious, I think. So that's encouraged as well. So yeah, retailers are really doing a lot more of that, and it has to kind of be done to get people back into these spaces which have otherwise gone a lot quieter. And in terms of what we do to get involved with that as lawyers, I think, well, pretty much everything they have to do, it's almost a business deal, really. And we're a lot of the time behind the scenes looking at the contracts, looking at how this can be done in the best way, the most efficient way. You'll see a lot of partnerships with different brands, partnering with maybe tech companies and things like that. So from our perspective, as Brendan said earlier, you need to have your retail hat on and your tech hat on and be thinking about how that can work, how you can make the most cost efficient solution for your client and get everything over the line as soon as possible. You have the property lawyers who will be literally thinking about the space itself, how that will work, where's the best space, what kinds of things you can do with it, things like shop fit, so physically what you're going to go in and you're going to see and what it's going to look like. These are all things which really lawyers get involved in, and I think that's probably one of it is my favourite part of the job. I think as a lawyer, you can, a lot of the background stuff you may do, you're probably going to do contracts, you're going to do advice, or you're going to do litigation, but it's what sits behind that which really actually makes your day job interesting, I think. And so all of this stuff, I'm like, cool, I get to go into the shop and do this thing. While I was at Fraser's Group on secondment, for example, it was great working on contracts. And then we'd actually go over to the stores across the road and I'd be like, I did that. I was involved. And it's things like that which are really tangible and fun. And yeah, I think those are the types of things which lawyers get involved in, as well as all the other types of things that you think of behind the scenes.
Thanks for that, Jalila. And just quickly, Brendan, if I could turn to you, just picking up on something Jalila said there about seeing, if you've been working really hard for weeks on end and seeing the, the fruits of your labor tangible, whether that be something in store or I think you mentioned in your introduction an EA Sports game, that must give you quite a thrill.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's so many different examples. I do like Z's as well, obviously going there and having a pizza and being involved in the fact that the products on the plate are sort of due to some of my help anyway, or even if it's very small. But yeah, it's good seeing it in practice and play out. And when you get off the tube so I travel up into London, get off at Waterloo, and Google run a huge campaign. There was a launch of a new product, the Google Nest, if people know it. And there it was, just on a billboard with the caption that I approved, along with a partner here at the firm. So yeah, it is pretty cool seeing it play out in reality, not augmented reality, actual reality, I guess, which is good. And it just brings it to life. And it's pretty cool.
That's great, Brendan. We've just got a spontaneous question. I just want to put it to the panel to see if they've got any thoughts on it, because we've talked about how consumer habits change, but there's a question here about the actual products themselves, particularly in clothing, and they ask, considering the growing appeal towards brands with sustainability focus, such as the website Depop, what do you deem the future of brands such as Primark, H&M and Boohoo, whose success is heavily based on fast fashion and providing an endless array of clothing options at cheap prices? How do you see that developing? Is that presumably there's a space in the market for both, but do you see the big guys like Primark, H&M and Boohoo, will they come under increased pressure over time to become more sustainable and maybe even more eco-friendly?
I can jump in first if you want. With I think we're definitely at a turning point when it comes to sustainability. There is certainly a lot of talk about it at the moment. It's a real hot topic. There's definitely rising consumer demand for more sustainable products, which is obviously like putting pressure on brands to innovate and come up with alternative lines that can meet those demands. I do think for the likes of those companies that you mentioned, it's going to be interesting to kind of watch now over the next kind of 12 to 24 plus months to see how they react. I would imagine, like many brands, like we've already seen it with, your H&M and Topshop and so on, that they will kind of dip their toe into the water with a sustainable sub-brand within their kind of portfolio. But I think the way things are at the moment, often with sustainability and sustainable goods, it can mean they are more expensive currently to make, which means the price is going to be higher, which means it is a certain element of the market that's going to be able to afford to be that sustainable consumer. I think we have a long way to go to change that and to democratize it. But I mean, I suppose to go back to answer your question, I think, yeah, they must be feeling the pressure, and I think it'll be interesting to watch and see how they react. I think, the market is going to demand it. It's just a matter of time.
Thanks
But
for that.
add to that as well, I think that I'd say probably like for likes of the examples we've given, Primark, I think that they recently said, obviously they've come under a lot of pressure for this, a lot of media coverage in terms of their practices and stuff. And I think it was about 2 weeks ago, they recently said that they're going to make a move to making all their products recyclable or ethically sourced or something within the next decade. So it shows even they are trying to do it. But when you say the next decade, that's a long time coming almost, and you'll see. But I think we'll definitely see the move towards it. I think there's no way that we won't, especially when retailers and actually consumers and retailers themselves and the people who are behind the scenes of those retailers are really caring about this thing as well. So I think it will definitely see a move towards it, but I do think it will affect their commercial model and the prices that can be offered. But I do think we're seeing consumers willing to pay more actually, if it means that products are more ethically and environmentally friendly. So.
Thanks for that, Julie. I'm sorry, Brendan, you were just going to come in now.
Yeah, just a quick one. I think a prime example of what retailers are doing in this space at the moment, who are fast fashion by way of definition. For example, Pretty Little Thing have just appointed Molly May as sort of brand ambassador, who, albeit has joined a fast fashion brand, I think, as Kira said, you'll see a Molly May sort of collection that will fall off the side of that, which will then have a sustainability factor to it. So I think the way retailers are doing that, operate in that fast fashion space, from what I've seen anyway today, is they are being quite clever in the sense that they're bringing in these influencers or people who will appeal to millennials or the target audience, creating their own brand, but with a sustainability factor to it. So it ticks both boxes. You can look like Molly May, but also help the environment as well. So everyone wins, right? And Pretty Little Thing make a lot of money out of it. So everyone's a winner.
Thanks for that, Brendan. Sorry, Sophie.
I was just going to pick up on this point, and I know we might cover sustainability later in the session as well, but seeing as we're talking about it now, just to give a bit of a flavour of some of the work that RPC and the retail pillar does in this space, particularly thinking about the rise in ethical consumerism and the response by retailers to try and make their products more sustainable. Some of the work that we've been doing is advising retailers and consumer brands on their green claims. So that's the marketing claims that they put on their products or on social media or on their websites that relate to their products and the environmental impact of their products. And it's, as Kira said, sustainability is a very hot topic, and green claims, particularly at the moment, is getting a lot of attention by the regulators. So last week, the UK's consumer watchdog, the Consumer Markets Authority, so the Competition and Markets Authority, published a new green claims code. So that basically sets out how businesses can ensure that they're complying with consumer protection law when they're making these kind of green claims. And obviously there's a real risk for retailers if they get these claims wrong, because they can not only risk enforcement action, but they could also really damage their brand. And as the others have said, we're seeing a lot of consumers really voting with their feet, and that they're kind of ready and willing to switch brand loyalty if they don't think a brand is living up to their stated environmental credentials. So some of the work that we've been doing with clients, particularly in the food and drink space, is working with their legal and marketing teams to look at the kind of claims they're making about their products, helping kind of adjust the wording and reviewing the material and information that they have to try and back up and substantiate those claims, to make sure that they are complying with consumer protection law. So just an example of what we're doing in this space. And I think a lot of retailers are really focused on this area at the moment.
Thanks very much for that, Sophie. We're going to move on to a couple of questions about law and regulation. And the first one to kick things off is, as more retailers experiment with emerging technologies such as facial recognition software and virtual augmented reality experiences, what steps do they need to take to ensure that they do not breach those dreaded data protection regulations?
Indeed. I think I can pick this one up, Tom. Thank you. It's a very, very good question, Michael. Thank you very much. Yeah, the world of virtual software and reality, and it comes back to that immersive experience, whether that be in store or whether you're at home trying on your newest pair of sunglasses or whatever that may be. It has gone crazy, particularly. So I used to work at Curry's in my uni days and selling TVs a couple of years ago, and I remember when the first Samsung headset came out, and everyone was it was just crazy. It was just absolute bedlam madness. And at first, everyone was just so excited to try it on, and now it's sort of every shop you go in, there's the option to have some experience of that nature. So, yeah, they do need to be very careful. Ultimately, it's pretty evident that they need to take steps. This particularly due to the huge increase popularity of this area. I guess what can they do? Come to RPC and ask us for some advice, I guess. But no, on a serious note, jokes aside, I guess consent. So it depends. I guess it is product specific. So we work for various companies operating in this space. So I won't say the name, but we were working for someone recently who are bringing out a product early next year, similar to the a Ring doorbell. This is quite a good example, actually. So the Ring doorbell, when the postman knocks your door and you can see who's at your door and you can go on your phone and whatever it may be. So a competitor is bringing out a similar product within the next 3 months. And we were having a discussion with them as, okay, it's great that you can have the consent because you're purchasing it. So you're happy for your face to be on there, or your family's, or your dog. Who knows how far it could go potentially. But it's a different question when, for example, the postman's face is captured and saved, or someone who lives next door. So, for example, Tom, if you live next door to me, do you really want your face saved on my device? Is that you've had no consent? You're not knowingly accepting that your face is going to be recorded as you walk past the door. So all of these different tangible risks come into play. And ultimately, you have to take a view. And albeit it's quite easy that if you walk into a store, it's quite easy to do because you pick up your phone and you go, okay, I accept you. Yes. And you tick the box and you're in. But it's when you think about those instances whereby there is not an option to opt in to your consent being taken, that it gets a little bit more difficult. And what would we advise a client to do or a retailer to do in that area is we ask them to undertake a data protection impact assessment, so a DPIA. And basically what that entails is they will look through how much data is captured, the risks involved in that data. When it comes to facial recognition, it's particularly prevalent because it's classed as special category data. Sorry, I won't go into too much because it's gets a bit intense with the law and the provisions and stuff. But just as a sort of a brief overview, the special category data comes with even more intense obligations, Tom. Obviously GDPR and stuff, but there's even more that the relevant retailer would have to undertake, and also the risks attached would be considerably more as well. So fines, etc., if there was a breach of data protection law. So I think in answer to the question, I guess they just need to be very careful. Where consents can be obtained quite easily, they need to ensure that those consents are obtained. And they need to make it clear that if there is recording taking place, whether that be outside, wherever that may be, they need to be careful to make sure that that's made known. And I think probably a couple of years ago, it was okay to bury some terms and conditions in a privacy policy that no one would read. But now I've seen personally retailers in this space and tech companies as well, they're almost making it clear that they are taking some data because it shows that they are trying to be as honest and open as possible. So actually it's a selling point because you go, okay, we understand you're taking our data, but you're being upfront about it. Whereas some companies, and I think this will be a trend going forward, is it's rather than trying to sneak data and say, oh, here's a freebie or whatever it may be, but actually that we're going to civil your data and sell it to third parties. Now it's a way in which if retailers and tech companies get it right, they can actually increase their user base by being open and honest. hopefully
Thanks for that.
answers.
No, it's a superb response, Brendan. And just picking up, just to bounce back a question, it's quite funny because obviously all of you are working right at the forefront of some of the most interesting areas. And how often have you got to be almost like the sensible guys in the room, in the respect that you've got these clients that are coming to you with, far-flung ideas, facial recognition, all this kind of really cool virtual reality stuff, and you've just got to kind of almost rein them back in a little bit? Is there a lot of that involved?
Yeah, there probably is. Yeah, unless anyone else got. Yeah, there is, Tom. I think there is. I think it's especially in the ad marketing world, because someone will come out of a claim or they'll say, right, we're doing this is fantastic, and it might be a fantastic idea, but in reality how it plays out might not be so fantastic because the backlash might not be great, and especially when we're talking about data capture, etc. Obviously the fines can be huge, massive, even for the biggest in the world, the Amazons, the Google, the Facebook. Yeah, it's important they get it right, and they do take it seriously. And we work alongside them to get it right. And I think tech giants, retailers, tech v retail, again, it's obviously a retail seminar, but you can see how much tech comes into retailers' minds now, and their day-to-day practices. But yeah, I think there's a real drive to get it right now, more so than ever.
There probably was a point in time as, an external advisor where it was enough to, explain the risks and be that like voice of reason and go, no, 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 and this is why, and this is what the risk is. But actually, what really makes a good commercial lawyer now and a business partner is someone who does that, but then takes the next step, which is working with the business, like putting the law to one side and kind of going back to what the proposal is and going, well, how can we make this work? Being really creative. It's like close the law books for a second and think about like, what's the solution here? Because actually, like when you're servicing your in-house client, and usually like it's an in-house team who are coming out to us, it's no good for them to go, oh, well, RPC said no. It's like, well, yeah, but how do we achieve what we want to achieve? So I think that's what makes it really interesting as well. It's like being that extra bit, like the kind of creative bit of the job.
Thanks for that, Kira. We're now going to move on to a question on intellectual property. And this is from Victoria from the University of California, Berkeley. Wow, fantastic. What, in your opinion, are the modern IP challenges, but also opportunities in the IP space for brands due to technological innovations such as NFTs, 3D printing, blockchain, etc.?
I'm happy to grab this. Nice to meet you, Victoria. So IP challenges, well, we've probably had a fair few challenges in this jurisdiction that don't only apply to IP, but obviously Brexit was a big one for anyone, any brand or retailer who had a portfolio of registered rights within the EU. Because obviously since Brexit, we've had to look at, there's just going to be essentially be a much bigger administrative and cost burden on those brands in terms of managing their portfolio from now on, because obviously they'll have to deal with all the UK rights as separate from their EU rights. I think as well, probably like another challenge, and we've yet to really see it play out, but will be around how the laws as a result of Brexit, the IP laws, like evolve and diversify. And I suppose I can see how that can be potentially challenging, particularly given that like most of the types of clients that we work for now are selling stuff at a global or European level, and so there's going to be certain complications there around compliance when there is diversification between the law here and the law in the EU. Another one, obviously, that's it's been around for years, which is a real challenge, obviously, for IP rights holders, is the patent troll situation. There still seems to be an awful lot of them in the market. And I suppose for those of you who are like, what the hell is she talking about? Patent trolls are basically companies who buy up huge portfolios of registered patents and essentially don't do anything themselves, but just make money out of chasing down third parties and threatening them with action or gently encouraging them to take a license of their patented technology to avoid litigation. Unfortunately, for a lot of companies, when they're met with that type of letter, and particularly if it's in the States, and if you're a small to medium sized company, you kind of don't have much option really, other than often saying, okay, we'll take a license, because the flip side of trying to defend an patent infringement action, and the cost exposure just makes it prohibitive. So you can't, you're kind of left with little choice. So that's always kind of an ongoing challenge for a lot of companies. In terms of opportunities, yeah, like, I mean, there is so much IP being created by retail and consumer brands with the rise of the types of stuff Brendan was talking about there, augmented reality and virtual reality and so on, and the use of blockchain and supply chains. NFTs, very hot topic, really interesting that Victoria mentioned that. We actually hosted as part of our retail and consumer day last week, as part of London Tech Week. We had a panel discussion on, actually a masterclass on NFTs and the rise of NFTs. So NFTs are basically non-fungible tokens. They are a digital asset, and some of you may have heard of the well-publicized ones, like there was obviously the NBA Hot Shots, or the NBA Top Shots. I'm showing my sports lack of knowledge now, but like they basically got onto the NFT idea like a couple of years ago. And according to published reports, the NBA have made 800,000 in additional revenue out of selling NFTs. And basically what they've done is they've created these digital assets, which essentially is historic footage just repurposed as a non-fungible token and then sold to individuals who obviously could pay for that, and they have their kind of one-off digital asset. It's something that's really interesting in terms of IP rights and copyright, and who owns the copyright. So we've had examples recently where Emily Ratajkowski, who some of you may have heard of, she retrieved a photograph that had been taken of her without her consent, and actually created then an image of her holding the retrieved photograph and sold that off as an NFT for like a six-figure sum. I know I can see Tom raising eyebrows here. It's there's still a lot of skeptics out there, I think, around the whole NFT world, and the metaverse and what happens in it. But for any retailers or brands who basically sell stuff, there is a very obvious market to tap into. I mean, there are, like, until the last 6 months or so, this was all relatively new to me, but there's a market out there where there's people with their avatars, and they are happy to pay a lot of money to put a pair of Gucci shades on their avatar, and Gucci are going, thanks very much, we'd love to do that, here's your NFT. And only this week, I think, Dolce & Gabbana have had an auction where they've been auctioning off NFT images as well. And what the brands are doing actually is they're linking it to utilities, they call it. So as well as your NFT, when you pay for that, you might get, some kind of lifetime membership to events that the brand is hosting, or other things like that, in terms of like building that relationship with the brand. So I mean, I think it's an interesting new area, and we certainly, and they actually were on our panel last week. One of our clients, AB InBev, who have they're the entity that owns Stella Artois, they've actually been one of the first kind of FMCG brands to do an NFT. So they did because Stella historically has always sponsored the Ascot races here in the UK, the actual physical Ascot races, and they're known as, like, they're the key beer sponsor for them. They actually have collaborated with Zed Run, which are a virtual reality online horse race, which is run out of a tech company in Australia, of all places. So they collaborated with them to sponsor Zed Run, so these virtual horse races. So actually, like, people were able to buy a horse, and then you can breed the horse, and you can run the horse and race the horse and make money off it. And so, yeah, that's worked out really well for them. And I know it's something that they're certainly looking at delving into deeper. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff on IP.
Thank you very much for that, Kira. I cannot believe we're into the last 5 minutes of the Q&A. It's just absolutely flown by, but there's a couple of things. I would like to get to a careers question to the end, but first, I'm going to ask the people that are tuned in at home to have a look at our poll this afternoon. Now, the speakers, you won't be able to see this, but I'll read it out and then I'll read the responses so you've got an idea. But the question that we're asking students at home is, what will have the greatest impact on the global retail sector over the next 5 years? And students have 4 options. The first one being pressure for retailers to become more eco-friendly and more sustainable. The second option, scrutiny over staff welfare. The third option, continued growth of online shopping. Or the final one, effective dominant market players such as Amazon. Now, the votes are coming in. I'll just give people a few more seconds to cast their vote because it always changes as soon as I mention a response. But it's actually very, very close, closer than we've had in a long time. Now, the leader at the moment is becoming more eco-friendly, followed just behind by the effective dominant market players such as Amazon, then continued growth of online shopping, and very bottom with just 1 vote, scrutiny over staff welfare. So it'll be interesting to just get the panel. The clear leader really is becoming more eco-friendly. Do you think that is going to be, presumably it's going to be among the top pressures, but do you think that could be the top pressure among the
Who wants to take that one?
Or is the reality they're all going to affect it?
I think they are all things that are going to be like, major issues for retailers in the near future. The eco one, definitely. Like, I mean, there are, with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, like there's pressure on businesses globally to make sure that we reach our 2030 targets, and particularly around carbon emissions and that. So, and it's been legislated for as well, with companies that are of a certain size here in the UK have reporting requirements and so on. So that probably is something, because it's very much been legislated for, that I think we are, they won't have any choice but to comply.
Thanks very much for that, Kira. Does any of the panel have any thoughts on that? Well, there's one at the bottom there that got only 1 vote, and that was the kind of greater scrutiny of staff welfare. Now, we've seen a lot of major brands hit headlines over the course of the years for not treating their staff, particularly those that are manufacturing them overseas, not very well, not paying the right levels of amount. Do you think that's going to become an added pressure for these particularly fast fashion firms?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that definitely. I think as well that just even on the basic level, when we're talking about employee welfare, just bringing it back to what's happening at the moment, things like petrol shortages and just staff shortages and things like that, it's very important that businesses are treating their employees well. Same with any other industry as well. People are employee working practices have changed probably more than ever with the retail sector at the moment, because obviously that's so consumer. So retailers are actually, I was very surprised to see anyone put that, but I guess it's from probably our focusing on. From our side, we're seeing loads of questions, loads of queries. This is high on retailers' agendas in terms of getting this right and caring about their people. In terms of what you've just said about people being under scrutiny from the media and just in general from consumers about their practices, particularly in fashion and stuff like that, there are different treaties essentially that are being set up within the retail industry and communities that people are basically willing to sign up to make sure that they're doing better. I think it was as a result of the warehouse fire in Bangladesh and all the stuff that came from that, like retailers are taking the initiative and making sure that they're taking responsibility for this type of thing. And that will then make them hold their feet to the fire and make sure they're doing what they need to be doing. So it's definitely something on the agenda, and it's something that it's being regulated almost internally and no doubt externally as well, given the parliamentary pressure and everything that's been on the table at the moment for those types of topics. So yeah, I don't think I can understand why other people voted different, because you only have one vote, and I may not have voted for that one either, but it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Jalila. We've got 1 minute left, but I'd just like to ask a careers advice question, because everybody that's tuned in at home ultimately wants to try and secure a training contract, hopefully at RPC if they're lucky. And the question is from Oliver Walker at the University of Nottingham, and he asks, what does RPC look for in trainees?
Do one
Any
of you
thoughts?
guys want to answer that?
I would
Yeah,
say,
I mean, I can give it a stab. Yeah, I mean, I think well, maybe I'll rephrase it as like, what kind of person would do well at RPC? Bearing in mind kind of the culture that we have and the kind of people that make up the fabric of the firm. And I think definitely someone who is like down to earth. We have this saying like, bring your whole self to work, which is totally true. Like, RPC is full of lots of different types of people who don't take themselves too seriously, but work hard, are ambitious, driven, care about their clients, take interest in their work. So I think those kind of people would definitely really excel at RPC. And if you have an interest in retail, then obviously we're a great firm to come to as well.
Thanks for that, Sophie. And sorry, Brendan, were you about to add something there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, yeah, I completely agree with the guys. Obviously, I didn't train here, so but it was obvious coming in as an NQ what the firm was like and the people that work here, etc. And it does sound cliche, but I think having worked for various firms during my course, during my short career so far, whether that be a VAC scheme for a week, you do really get a sense and a feel. So I'd stress to everyone that's dialed in today, make sure you get the experience and make sure, although it's a very competitive market, and yes, it's hard to get a TC, but make sure that the firm you go to is right for you as well. So there's nothing worse than sitting there for 2 years at a place that you don't want to be at. It will not be very enjoyable. And also you won't make sure that you're interviewing them. So I guarantee you in a TC interview, they will ask you, do you have any questions? Or is there anything else you want to add? I think that's what they usually say. And I think I asked them, why should I work for you? And it's quite bold, and you might not, and maybe that's just me being me, but I think it's almost you have to interview them as well. You have to make sure that these people are the right people for your development, for your career, because if they're not, look elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's why there's so many good firms out there.
To add to that as well, I think that's perfect advice that Brendan's just given, and also really think about why you want to be at a firm. So what is the type of work that they do that you're genuinely interested in, and try and work that out. It's all very well and good if you go into an interview, you might have the best prepped answer for why you're interested in, I don't know, oil and gas. If that is what you're interested in, that's absolutely fine. But if you've just taken it from their website and regurgitated it back to them, it's going to come across. Whereas if it's something that you're genuinely passionate about and you would like to do on your day-to-day, then it will come across. And I think I remember being a student and commercial awareness was thrown around all the time. And I remember going to interviews and being like trying to scan through the Financial Times as fast as possible. But if it's something that you're actually interested in, you'll have that knowledge anyway. And things like retail, the type of stuff that we do, it just comes to you depending on what you come across in your life. So if you can bring that in, that's probably one of the easier ways to bring yourself to an interview, as Sophie said, is if you are just talking about things you're genuinely passionate about. So yeah, that would be another top tip as well.
That's great. Really good advice. And unfortunately, we've run out of time for the Q&A part. We had lots and lots of questions that we've just not had time to answer and put to the panel. But I know Sophie, Brendan, and Jalila are staying around, and they're going to be heading to the booths very shortly for the networking. So if you did submit a question and we haven't had time to ask it, get yourself over to their booth, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer it in there. But firstly, thanks again for the panel for giving up their time. Some of those responses were absolutely excellent. It's a fascinating area of work that you're working in. But I'm going to ask you guys to drop off stage and head to your booths, and you can do that by clicking the return button at the bottom of your screen and heading to the booths. They're all heading off there now. So if you're tuned in at home, the event is not over. We have an hour of networking now, and we have several booths for you this afternoon. As I've just alluded to, we have the trainee booth. So there's some of the firm's trainees that will be on hand to ask any questions that you might have about life at the firm or the training contract application process, whatever it might be. And I think we've got Holly and Jessica in that booth. We've got the Meet the Speakers booth. We've got Brendan, Jalil, and Sophie, who you've just heard from there. They'll be on hand to ask questions in that booth. And we've also got Meet the Early Talent team. And we've got Eleanor in there and Estelle in the third booth. So I'm heading over to the networking now. What you need to do is click on the button on the left-hand side of your screen, which says Expo. You click on that and then you'll be greeted with those 3 booths, and you can select any one of those booths. Once you've selected the booth, we are really encouraging you to share your audio and camera. So don't just go in the booth and just kind of lurk about in the background. Be brave, click the share audio and camera, and that way you can network with the speakers or the trainees or the early talent team face to face. It just makes that interaction much more better, and then they can recognize the face. So if you're ever going to apply for a training contract, you can say, hey, Eleanor, I met you in the booth at the Legal Cheek event. It's nice to meet you in person. So please, please, please head over to the expo now. That's where I'm going. I'm heading over to the networking right now. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the networking.